Hey everyone, as you know, I'm always looking to improve my main recording and editing setup. My main computer is an Apple Mac Studio, so I was delighted when the company RayCue sent me out the Thunderbolt 5 dock for review. Now there's a lot of Thunderbolt 5 docks on the market, but this will obviously appeal to Apple Mac Studio owners like myself because, as you can see here, the dock sits flush underneath the Apple Mac Studio. There's a few ports at the front there. There's two SSD slots inside, and round at the back we have a lot of display connections as well. So it is quite a versatile solution. Now I do appreciate RayCue sending this product out for review, but they have no influence on what I think or what I say in this video. So let's take a closer look at what this Thunderbolt 5 dock offers. The official name of the dock is the RayCue 10-in-1 80 gigabits per second dock for Mac Studio. It's a perfect fit for the M4 Max and M3 Ultra Apple Mac Studios that were released in 2025, but it should hopefully fit Mac Studios released in the near future too. Plus, you can use this with MacBook Pros and Mac Minis which have Thunderbolt 5 by simply purchasing a longer Thunderbolt 5 cable. It's worth noting that, generally speaking, Thunderbolt 5 docks are backwards compatible and do work with Thunderbolt 4 connections as well, but this dock was obviously designed with an 80 gigabits per second connection in mind. The dock currently retails at $269. It can also be purchased with a 1TB Gen 4 SSD for $398, a 2TB SSD for $438, and a 4TB SSD for $588. I suspect I may have one of the early review units of this product, as the box states that it is modelled DK5C2, with the product name being Mac Mini Hub and Stand. The hub does fit the older design of the Apple Mac Mini perfectly, but those earlier versions of the Mac Mini, which had M1, M2 or M2 Pro chips, had support for Thunderbolt 4, not Thunderbolt 5. So, like with any Thunderbolt 4 connection, the available bandwidth will be half of what's available with Thunderbolt 5. When you open up the box, you will see a large user manual that shows you how to get started, what ports are available, specifications, and setting SSDs up in RAID. The accessories box contains two SSD thermal pads, which are around 1.5mm thick, a small flathead screwdriver, two screws to hold your SSDs in place, and a short yellow Thunderbolt 5 cable which has RayCue branding. The accessories box also contains a 65-watt GAN charger. It uses a two-prong US power adapter by default, with my version coming with a useful converter which transforms it into a three-prong UK power adapter. The dock itself looks great. The top of the dock looks a little retro-futuristic with shiny aluminium fins surrounding the RayCue name, whilst at the back you will see the main Thunderbolt 5 connection port to connect to your Mac Studio, two HDMI 2.1 ports, one DisplayPort 2.1 port, a Type-C port for power, and a button that turns the internal fan on and off. There are air vents at the sides, and round the front there are two Type-A 3.2 Gen 2 ports rated at 10 gigabits per second, a 3.5mm audio input, and Type-A and Type-B compact flash express ports, each rated at 10 gigabits per second. The two built-in SSD slots are a great selling point of this dock and one of the most useful features for my own setup. I opted to use a couple of 2TB Firecooler 520 Gen 4 SSDs in the dock, one of which I repurposed from an external SSD I was using with my M4 Mac Mini. The SSD area at the base of the dock can be accessed without a screwdriver, and each SSD slot supports any size of M2 SSD. The maximum expansion across two ports is 16TB, so you can insert two 8TB SSDs if you wish, but be sure to use the M2.1 slot if you're only inserting a single disk. The maximum expansion across both SSD slots is 16TB, so you can insert two 8TB SSDs if you wish, but be sure to use the M2.1 slot if you're only inserting a single SSD. Once I had applied thermal pads to both SSDs, all I had to do was insert them into the available slots, screw them into place, and place the panel back on. I was using most of the available ports on my Mac Studio already, and the computer sat on a clear stand that I purchased to reduce dust. To set up the RayCue dock, I simply had to remove my old stand, slide in the dock, connect the dock to my Mac Studio using the provided Thunderbolt 5 cable, and then connect the power cable from the 65-watt charger at the back of the dock. My Mac Studio instantly recognised both FireCuda SSDs when I booted up. Atto Disk Benchmark showed a read speed of 3.42 GB per second reading and 3.09 GB per second writing for the first drive, and 3.4 GB per second reading and 3.04 GB per second writing for the second drive. And it's obviously no real surprise the drives give near identical results, seeing as they are the same model. Whilst I could have kept the drives separate, I wanted to take advantage of a RAID 0 setup for improved speeds, and so that macOS would view the drives as one 4TB drive, not two 2TB drives. RAID can be set up via Disk Utility in macOS. The process is incredibly straightforward, but if you're unsure of any steps, I recommend referring to the provided manual, as the manual details the whole procedure. Once my drives were set up in RAID and showing as a 4TB drive, I added the drive to DaVinci Resolve as my cache drive. I then did a performance test using Atto. I saw read speeds of 6.43 GB per second and write speeds of 5.82 GB per second. These speeds were identical, whether the internal fan was switched on or off. So you may not want to use the internal fan if you don't see a big change in performance. I've not found the fan to be loud myself, so I've been keeping it on. What I like about the dock is that if you do enable the fan, it will sync with your computer and automatically switch on and off when your Mac Studio is powered on and off. The support for SSDs in RAID format is one of my favourite features, but I've also found the front type A ports to be useful for connecting webcams and flash drives. One of the great features of this RayCue dock is connecting multiple monitors. At the moment, I'm using one of the dock's HDMI ports to connect my portable Arzoper monitor, which has freed up a Type-C port on my Mac Studio. You may recall that the back of the dock shows HDMI 1 and 2 as mode 1, HDMI 2 and DisplayPort as mode 2, and HDMI 1 and DisplayPort as mode 3. These combinations are shown because the dock supports a maximum of 2 connected displays at any one time. Each of the dock's HDMI and DisplayPort connections support up to 8K at 30Hz or 4K at 144Hz, and you can continue to use the HDMI port on your Mac Studio too, making the Mac Studio and RayCue hub setup a simple way of connecting 3 displays. You can expand even further using your Mac Studio's available Thunderbolt 5 ports. My M4 Max Mac Studio supports a maximum of 5 4K monitors, whilst the M3 Ultra version supports up to a whopping 8 4K monitors. So at this stage, you should have a good idea as to what this RayCue Thunderbolt 5 dock is all about. I've given you a lot of facts and figures, and I've spoke about how I've set it up and integrated it into my own setup. Now, as I record this, I've been using the dock every day for a little over 4 weeks, and I've been delighted with it. And I've been delighted with it for a few reasons. I think when you look at a dock or a hub, whatever you want to call it, I think when you're looking at it, you obviously have to factor in price, but you also have to factor in reliability. You know, are there any issues, software issues, connection issues? That's always a big problem with a lot of Thunderbolt docks. Now, I've not had any of those myself with the way that I've been using it, so I'm happy with that. But I also think that any dock or hub, the success of it or how happy you are with it, it really depends on the port selection and how it helps you, how it complements your existing setup. And the ports that are available here really do help my own setup. I'm actually connecting this webcam here through the dock there. That's the webcam that I'm using just now. And it really does complement my existing setup. Firstly, because of the 2 SSD slots. I was connecting many SSD enclosures before. They do work, it does work doing that way, but you kind of end up with a less clean octopus kind of setup. The two SSDs I've set up as RAID, and I've been using them set up as RAID for DaVinci Resolve, and those fast speeds and the fact that it's set up as one 4TB drive, I've had less issues with video editing in DaVinci Resolve. I had a lot of kind of weird caching issues before, but they've all kind of disappeared. I'm sure those issues could have been resolved by having two SSD enclosures, setting them up as RAID, etc. But this is such a better setup. The other reason that I like this is because of the 3 display connections at the back. I'm using one of them already for my Azopa monitor over there, but I am tempted to buy another portable monitor. I like the plug and play nature of these small monitors. And if I do that, I have a spare HDMI or display port at the back of the dock to use. So, I'm kind of set up for the future as well. Now, as far as port selection at the front, I think they were really smart to choose CF Express slots at the front, A and B, because we already have an SD card slot at the front of the Mac Studio. We've got a 3.5mm input as well. And then we've got 2 Type A ports. Now, those Type A ports are 10 gigabits per second, which is worth noting because the 4 Type A ports at the back of the Mac Studio are 5 gigabits per second. So I'm adding 2 fast Type A ports, the fastest Type A ports you can have. And that's something my setup was missing. Now, a part of me does think maybe a Type-C port at the front would have been good, or another Type-C port at the back. But I'm kind of complaining for no reason now, because if I need to connect a 10 gigabits per second connection to a Type-C device, I can just buy a Type A to Type-C cable and I'm sorted. So this really does complement my existing setup. And you can see I do have a lot of cables. I'm pretty much using everything that I can. I've got 2 capture cards here and I've got the webcam there. I like having this one free so that I can, plug in flash drives and different things. At the moment, I'm not using those CF Express slots, but I am thinking of buying a newer camera this year. So I might, take the leap of faith into the next generation and get one of those faster CF Express cards. But overall, I'm delighted because I think it looks great. It's practical. I'm using the provided 65-watt charger, but you could just use a power delivery charger as well in your own setup. This just ticked all the boxes for me. Now, I'm sure you're all aware of this already, but with a Thunderbolt 5 dock, you've got 80 gigabits per second connection both ways, or 120/40. But with any dock, any hub, you're always limited by bandwidth. So if you're connecting a lot of things, you would see the read and write speeds of your SSDs drop. That is not an issue for me. It really isn't. And the reason being, when I'm editing videos, I'm not connecting anything. I'm not recording. I'm not, going in and out with flash drives or other things. I'm just focusing on the editing. So the SSDs, apart from the monitors, are like the only thing that's going through that Thunderbolt 5 connection. When I'm using the webcam here, when I'm using other things here, I'm not using the SSDs. So you're always limited by that Thunderbolt 5 connection, the maximum available bandwidth. But because of the fact that I'm using the SSDs when I'm not using the connections, it works for me. But you'll have to have a think as to whether that's going to work for you. Your SSD and monitor setup could be a little bit different. But for my own setup, it's worked out great. I've been delighted with it. And yeah, not much else to say about it. It's a fantastic little hub, and it is one I can recommend. But as always, if before you spend any money, check out the official website, check out other YouTubers and listen to what they've said about it as well. My own experience has been overwhelmingly positive, but do your research, guys. If you get any questions about this Thunderbolt 5 dock, please do leave a comment below. I'll do my best to answer. As always, if you enjoyed the video, thumbs up, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, take care.